Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and good afternoon. Although 2:30 in Cyprus is still very much at the heart of noon, I guess time is relative. I would like to thank the organizers of the Cyprus Forum for their invitation and their initiative to steer fruitful dialogue in a wide range of subjects during these 2 days, including, of course, our own panel under the title Changing Contours in the New Middle East. My name is Zenonas Tziarras. I'm a lecturer of Turkish and Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Cyprus, and I will be moderating this panel today. Exactly 3 years ago, the Abraham Accords were signed between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Since then, an entirely new dynamic has emerged in the broader Middle East, with Israel and the Arab world increasingly improving relations, the latest example being the exchange of high-level visits between Israel and Saudi Arabia. At the same time, we have also witnessed important developments in the Eastern Mediterranean and, of course, Europe, which has been directly affected by the breakout of the war in Ukraine. Ukraine has also had a decisive impact on broader global dynamics, even as the Eastern Mediterranean was influenced by developments in Greek-Turkish, Turkish-Israeli, and Turkish-Egyptian relations, developments in the energy sectors, and conflicts like those in Syria and Libya, among many other things. To discuss some of these issues, we have with us today 3 excellent speakers: Ambassador Oren Anolik, Dr. Ebtesam Ketbi, and Dr. Luigi Scazzieri. Unfortunately, Benedetta Berti could not be with us today because of unforeseen professional circumstances, but I think that we are still well positioned to have an interesting and fruitful discussion. Now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Ebtesam Ketbi, the founder and president of the Emirates Policy Center, one of the leading centers in the region, and a professor of political science at the United Arab Emirates University, and among many other things, a prolific author. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm first thankful for Cyprus Forum for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to visit Cyprus. This is the first time I'm coming. I'm glad to be here. When you want to talk about Middle East or the region, what is the new to talk about? Of course, the main topic people are talking about the reconciliation in the region. The Abraham Accord, the Saudi-Iranian rapprochement, the Israeli-Saudi staking, still on the way, not yet loading. Turkey, the Gulf, Turkey, Egypt, all these topic is taking place for discussion in the region or about the region. And this is what is the new dynamics, I would say, taking place in the region. And people also start talking or questioning why this is happening. All these rivalries, why this time it's happening. In fact, the main cause of that, there are maybe, I would say, 2. Because the zero-sum game, which was characterizing the past the behavior and the action and of all competing actors in the Middle East, it seems that nobody achieved what they want. They did not fulfill their goals from that zero-sum game. So they were looking to something else. In that context, all of the players, Turkey, Iran, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, looking to move to another, or Israel as well, another era, trying another thing, moving from zero-sum game to win-win formula. And of course, what's happening on the global sphere, the competition between the superpowers, mainly China, US, Russia also, have an impact on this. The announcing of the US that they are departing the region, and the region has to take care of itself. So, normalization between Israel and some of the Arab countries. The fatigue of the players from that zero-sum game. The fatigue came of everybody from that all rivalries, conflict, wars. It led to that kind of rapprochement between Saudi-Iranian, Abraham Accord, and the Abraham Accord, of course, it's, I would say, the most significant. I called it at that time game changer in the region. And it's still a game changer. And what came after that? The main impact that it led to a significant change in the geopolitics of Middle East, turning from conflict to moving towards rapprochement, de-escalation. And I would say this is one of the factors pushed the Iranian to de-escalate with the region. And because they thought also that Israelis are winning their neighbors, which naturally they should be in a good relation with them. And of course came also the Nagab Forum, which that Abraham Accord yielded in something can be executed in more cooperation in different ways, in economy, in energy, health, artificial intelligence, name it, wherever it is. For my country, UAE, when it's announced, it's a new version of foreign policy, zero problem, using economy and putting the economy above, and politics is serving economy. My country believes that it cannot work in a region with conflict. Economy cannot prosper in a region of conflict. So you have to de-escalate with all the players, Israel, Iran, Turkey, the main players in the Arab world. But would you say that this part of the region has a rosy picture now? No, it's not. Because this is a region of conflict, of crisis. The Sudan erupted, shows that we are still there. The Renaissance Dam between, the issue of Renaissance Dam between Ethiopia, Sudan, Egypt, not yet finished. No consensus between them how to solve this problem. It doesn't mean that we will depart the region of crisis and conflict. There is still there. There will be. But I'm talking about the main players also. And we saw that the escalation between Saudi and Iran, it means more de-escalation in Yemen war. That means can be also open for more agreement between the Houthi and the Saudi. The other thing I want also to highlight, if the competition between the two main players, mainly China and US, this is also will reflect itself on the region, because each one of them, mainly I would say not Chinese, the US is pushing more towards to depart relation with China, which cannot be in the region. China is fact, everywhere is fact, okay? And for a region has to diversify its partnership with everybody. For us, we choose economic relation with China and our military relation with US. But if that intensify, this is for sure, it will impact the region for more also tension and more conflict, and we will back maybe to zero-sum game again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. A very concise and insightful overview of what is happening in the region. Please keep your notes, because we will later have the opportunity to discuss these issues. My plan was to go to Dr. Luigi Scazzieri, but I feel that perhaps we should complete the Middle East picture before going to Europe. So, if that's okay, Ambassador, I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Oren Anolik, who will focus on recent developments as well. The ambassador is obviously the ambassador of Israel to Cyprus. His diplomatic career spans 3 decades, and among many other things, he's also known as the tallest diplomat in the Israeli Foreign Ministry. The floor is yours.
That's accurate, yes, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you all for coming at this difficult after-lunch hour. Thank you very much, Dr. Ketbi, for your very interesting intervention. Thank you, and thank for the organizers for enabling us to do this and speak with you about those issues. You must believe me that I did not compare notes with Dr. Ketbi. We didn't discuss what we were going to say, and it was very interesting for me to see how some of my talking points were stolen by Dr. Ketbi. So you might be hearing, in Hebrew, yes. So you might be hearing some points that will sound very familiar to you, but it just comes to strengthen, I think, the way that there are similarities in the way today that Israel and the UAE are viewing the region, which also explains why is it that our relations today are at the peak that they are and still strengthening. Sometimes people think that the Middle East is not changing. People think that, oh, it's the same country, same leaders for so many years. But actually, the changes are quite amazing. And I totally agree with Dr. Ketbi by saying, and this is the first talking point that I have as well, that the game changer of what's happening in the region in recent years are the Abraham Accords. We see it also from our perspective in a very similar way. It's not that we didn't have interesting relations even before the Accords. I mean, I can tell you personally, I was involved in relations with some of those countries 18 and 20 years ago. But everything was under the radar, everything was done in a very secretive way, things were not published. And there is a value, and there is an important value, and I think it makes a difference once you take things from being under the radar, only between governments, only between security systems, and you bring it to the level of a nation, of the people. And I think that the relations today are in a very different situation. The deepening of the relations is in all spheres. It's not just security. It's not just our focus on what we see as the main threat to the region, which is Iran. It also goes into economy, into trade, into investment, into tourism, into health, into culture, into people-to-people relations. The number of tourists increased. It's unbelievable. If I tell, I don't even have the exact numbers now, but talking about I think close to 1 million visitors from Israel in the UAE in recent years. We have, as Dr. Ketbi mentioned, we have today a platform, which is the Negev Forum, in which the moderate countries of the region can cooperate on all those vast issues. We have projects together. One very good example is the Blue and Green Prosperity Project, which brings together the Emirates, Israel, and Jordan, in which we are going to have solar energy, which is going to be produced in Jordan to be used in Israel, and desalination facilities are going to be built in Israel to provide water to Jordan. All of this with investments from the UAE. It's just one example of this win-win-win approach that was mentioned here before as well. When the Prime Minister of Israel was here in Cyprus a few weeks ago, and he had discussion with President Christodoulidis and with the Prime Minister Mitsotakis, one of the issues that they discussed was this corridor, that corridor of infrastructure, corridor of energy, of trade, of transportation that would go all the way from Asia, from India, via the Gulf, through the Middle East and Israel and Cyprus and Greece into Europe. This is I would say, it's a staggering vision that holds a lot into it to the people of this region and a lot of promise as well. I want to add to this one more thing. Nobody's doing nobody else a favor in this. This is something that really plays to the interest of all countries involved. And I agree with Dr. Ketbi also in saying this is not a zero-sum game anymore. This is a win-win situation. And as you know very well, and was mentioned here before, it's no secret that there are discussions about the possibility of a normalization agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. I want to be very hopeful about this, but I don't know what's going to happen. But no, the imagination can go wild thinking what can come about with this kind of cooperation that seemed almost impossible a few years ago. But there's also the half-empty glass. I mean, we spoke a lot right now about the opportunities, about the way that things are changing for the good, but there are other forces in this region, and there are still very powerful forces, and their intentions are very different. And of course, it's clear to us that the main threat to this region continues to be Iran. And Iran is it's a multifaceted, multi-layered kind of a threat, not just to Israel. It's a threat to the region. It's a threat to the peace-loving people of the world. It's a threat that includes the nuclear program, the missile program, the way that they are trying to undermine stability in this region, the way that they are encouraging and promoting terrorism, the weapons that they supply, the knowledge they supply, the directions that they are giving to their proxies in the region, the ambition to export the Islamic Revolution is still very much a major part of the Iranian policy, and with all due respect to Iranians' recent attempts to try to de-escalate the situation in the Middle East, there is a clear, stark, I would say, contradiction between what they are saying they want to do and what they are actually doing on the ground. You know, and taking it even closer to Israel, one of the major proxies of Iran is, of course, the terror organization Hezbollah, who is in control of what used to be the Lebanese state. And we are a bit concerned about what we see from Hezbollah in recent weeks and months. We see Hezbollah being more and more provocative, and we are looking with some of concern at what seems to be the growing confidence that Hezbollah is trying to project. And we know that with growing confidence also comes a bigger risk of miscalculation. We saw what happened in 2006 when a miscalculation by Hezbollah led us to a war in Lebanon, and it would be wiser if Hezbollah and its patron from Iran will be giving the right signals from the international community to be less provocative of what is being done. We also, closer again to Israel, we also have Hamas in Gaza, who continues its efforts to create havoc mostly in the West Bank. They are more careful when it comes to Gaza itself. They are not very much interested in going to another round of violence, so it seems, in Gaza, but they are making a lot of effort to try to make the life of the Palestinian Authority and of Israel more difficult in Jerusalem and in the West Bank. So far they are not successful, but this is, again, it's another place that we might be seeing in the future some sort of escalation instead of de-escalation. So there is plenty more that can be said, about the changes in the Middle East. I didn't touch at all about issues of migration, about terrorism, about climate and the way it affects our region. There is, of course, and was mentioned before, the increasing Chinese involvement, the question of where the United States is going, but you cannot speak about everything in the first 5 minutes, so we'll leave something for the questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That was indeed very interesting to see the wide range of issues that we have to face in this region. Let me move on and invite our next speaker, who is present via internet, Dr. Luigi Scazzieri, to share his thoughts with us. Dr. Scazzieri is a senior research fellow at the Center for European Reform and an expert on European security and defense and EU foreign policy. The floor is yours if you can hear us.
Yes, thank you very much. Can hear you very well, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel, although I'm sorry I can't join you in person. I'll just say that in a sense, my analysis is remarkably similar. I see the new Middle East as being made up of basically two elements. On the one hand, a detente or a thaw, we can call it, in the tensions in the region, and on the second hand, a move to a post-American Middle East. When it comes to the detente, the elements I think are the same have been said. I would just perhaps so of course the Abraham Accords, of course the normalization between Saudi and Iran. I would also maybe stress the change in relationships between Turkey and its neighbours. If we think if we compare the situation over the past 10 years with what has happened on the other hand since 2020, we see that I think Turkey has rethought its relations in the region, or is in the process of rethinking it, and it's reached out to most of its neighbours. Also, in terms of the relationship with the West, there's, I think, a desire to build a more constructive, if transactional relationship. And in recent months, also the relationship with Russia. Of course, Turkey continues to balance, but I was quite struck by its strong support for Ukrainian membership of NATO, for example, and for how it allowed the prisoners that Russia had released to move on to Ukraine. And then a fourth component, just in recent days, is just let's say the US and Iran trying to dampen tensions slightly. This is extremely fragile and not particularly hopeful of it, but who knows whether there might be a restart of regional diplomacy on the nuclear side as well. I would say that not all of these developments are equally strong in my view. The Abraham Accords, I think, have shown their resilience, but that's not the case with Turkey's rapprochement with its neighbours. I see that as still more fragile. The one with the West could quite easily be thrown off course if there were new tensions in the East Mediterranean, or indeed delays with Sweden's accession to NATO. And the prospect of a nuclear crisis with Iran is still extremely strong, unfortunately. The second part of the new Middle East is the shift to a post-American region. And there, really, part of the story is the US itself, and how it's now, as a result of the rapid changes in its policy between presidencies and on various issues, it's both not involved enough in the eyes of some regional actors, and yet too involved in the eyes of others. It's perceived as withdrawing, even though, of course, it insists it doesn't want to withdraw, but that perception has in itself become a reality. So Washington's influence, or at least its comparative influence, is shrinking. That of China is growing. It's growing in economic terms, where we see China being bigger and bigger investor, also in fields that the US considers sensitive, like 5G, like critical infrastructure, and indeed also a significant player in sales of some types of arms. That again is driving some difficulties in the relationship of regional allies with Washington, and also China rising in terms of political influence. And here I would point to how the recent expansion of the BRICS. So all of this kind of creates a more multipolar region, really, one in which I think countries in the region essentially, as we've heard, are very much agree, try both to have good relations with Washington and with Beijing, and to essentially pursue their own interests. And it's going to be, in my view, a test case really globally of the degree to which the US will try to push its partners in the region away from Beijing in its attempt to compete with China in the region. As far as Europe is concerned, I think it's both on the one hand full of opportunities, because of course it's good to have a region with fewer tensions and with more trade and with more cooperation within the region. It's also a challenge because Europe has really relied on, has kind of sat back and relied on America as a provider of security and America as a glue that kind of underpinned the European foreign policy unit. That doesn't mean that Europe and America have always agreed, and just quite recently under the Trump presidency, of course, the nuclear deal stood out as a major source of disagreement, the nuclear deal with Iran. But when America has withdrawn, and I'm thinking here, for example, of Libya, in particular in 2017, 18, 19, then Europeans were extremely divided. So often, that's something that definitely Europe has to come to grips with, how America's absence actually increases fragmentation in Europe's foreign policy. And happy to go in further if you want about the challenges that Europe faces in the region, but essentially there I think I would narrow it down to basically one of unity, in the sense that there is not a single foreign policy, but rather 27 plus 1, so the 27 member states plus that of the European Union per se. And secondly, that there's lack of resources, political effort and attention paid to the region.
Thank you very much, Dr. Scazzieri, for adding new dimensions and aspects to our discussion, going more global, so to speak. We have 15 minutes or so to engage in a discussion, and I would like to give the opportunity to the audience to talk first. Please keep your questions concise. I would rather receiving questions than long comments. So, and give the opportunity to our speakers to respond. Yes, sir?
Thank you.
Maybe a microphone for you.
Thank you for the illuminating perspectives. In talking about the changes in the region, you're focusing, I think, primarily on the economic advantages of the Accords and the benefits that bring to the region. Are there other advantages with regard to, let's say, the topic of the of this forum, transparency, societal issues that this new environment brings to all the countries? And also, if you could talk a little bit more about Turkey and the relationships that that your countries have now, particularly in the energy sphere, mean for where Turkey fits into this process.
Can we take one more? Would that be okay with you? Okay. Anyone else at this point? Okay. So let's move on with the response, and then we move on.
Well, for the first part of your question, that's right. I mean, Ambassador talk about people-to-people relation, mainly which has never happened between the Israeli and some of the Arab countries. And I remember at the beginning of the Abraham Accord, there were many interviews, many webinars, many workshops. And how I describe that kind of peace, I called it, it's not cold peace, like the one the Israeli did with Egypt and Jordan. It's warm peace. Why? Because it's including people to people, which hasn't been in that And because it has a background of war and conflict between the two sides. But if I want also to how to describe that, what's going on in terms of the new corridor, which is starting from India, moving towards the Middle East, but it is by passing two main players, which is Iran and Turkey as well. And here you will have also to wait what's their reaction, will be especially the one going through the Gulf, and how the Iranians are going to deal with their all tankers is there, and their arms, and their drones, and you also have some threat in that. And also the Turks looking to it that by passing them and that excluding them from the benefit they are taking, it's not something they are pleased with. Although they are, yes, on the forum of the gas and the Middle East forum, the gas and the whole energy, they are on that part, but this one also, they want to be part of it. But that I would call it what's happening is kind of connectivity through the economy. See, connecting those from east towards North Europe, I mean, this is something new, and whatever success we'll have in that, of course, it will reflect itself in the people's life, more prosperity in the region, more jobs for the youth also.
I don't think that I focus mainly on the economic aspects, but I would say that, and I think I said so, that the Abraham Accords are actually an opportunity for multifaceted relations. Security for sure, very strong security cooperation, economic we said, tourism we said, and the people-to-people, I'll just give an example, youth delegations. It's very important to make sure that also the leaders of the future will better understand both sides will understand each other better, so we put a lot of emphasis on exchanging of youth delegations. I'm told that also the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the UAE, for example, after some of the visits he had, introduced Holocaust memorial studies into the curriculum in the UAE, which also very helpful in trying to get a better understanding of the society of each other. So there are plenty of different fields in which relations are taking shape today. And without making any comparisons to other peace agreements, it is a very people-to-people kind of an agreement. I said before, the number of Israelis visiting UAE is staggering. It's hard to imagine, and people get to meet each other and see each other, and this is the best and most important thing that we have in these relations. As for the second part, by the way, I thought about the transparency part of it, which I'm not sure I have much to add on this. I think that just the fact that we can see beyond images and see beyond what we used to read about each other or see on TV about each other, I think this is maybe this element of transparency is very important here. As for Turkey, first of all, I need to give it, to hand it to Turkey. They felt they made mistakes and they were trying to correct them. I think this is very clear for what we are seeing in the region today. Turkey's policy was not successful, therefore they decided to change their policy, and you have to hand it to them for making this effort, first of all. Our relation with Turkey were not good, and it was a Turkish initiative to try to improve them, and we were very much on board because we have an interest in having better relations with Turkey. But I think it's clear to everybody in Israel, in Turkey, in the region, that it's clear who are our friends and allies in this region. But we believe that there is a way that we can have better relations with Turkey that would in no way be at the expense of our very good relations with Greece, with Cyprus, and with other countries in the region. When we meet Cypriot officials, it seems that we are reading each other, again, from the same talking points. We are telling each other the same thing. This is a good thing. This is not at the expense of other relations. This is not a zero-sum game. And this is the way we are approaching this rapprochement. As for energy, Currently, there is no cooperation with Turkey on energy. The answer is zero. What will be in the future? I cannot predict. I mean, it's very hard to make predictions, especially about the future. So I don't know, but it's part of a negotiation. It's part of a discussion. We are approaching this, and pardon my French, in the same way that porcupines are making love, very cautiously, very cautiously.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the audience? The lady in the front, and then you.
So I was wondering, correct me if I'm wrong, but the United States, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia have recognized the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as terrorist groups. Why are the other countries in the UN, and especially the EU, refraining from recognizing them as terrorist groups when they've done plenty of terrorist actions? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I agree with the speakers that there's definitely a much greater degree of hedging relationships. I mean, the countries of the region, I mean, many of them used to be very aligned or were in the camp of the Americans, if I can use it that way. But over the last 18 months, 2 years, or even longer, we've seen this increasing hedging. And I'm wondering if that's also in part to do with the fact that the US has been viewed as an unreliable partner, particularly when it comes to security-related issues. I mean, for example, when Iran attacked Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure, I mean, the Americans who are supposed to be the security partner of the Saudis basically sat back and did nothing. So does this sort of play into also this, you know, changing regional relationships, along with the entry of China, which now has, you know, very interesting ties with all of the countries in the region? And obviously this region is now the sort of focal point of China's newest corridor. I mean, we've had the North Corridor, the more middle corridor, the Belt and Road, and now there's a new corridor that's planned to go straight through the Middle East into Africa.
Thank you for your questions. I would like to give the opportunity to Dr. Scazzieri if he has any comments on what was asked.
Yeah. So just quite briefly, I think on the Revolutionary Guard point, the reality is that the EU is worried of how that would then impact the nuclear file, and that it would lead Iran to essentially be even less cooperative than it is, and to ramp up its nuclear program further and just close that channel of dialogue, perhaps crack down even harder on the IAEA inspections, so for potentially relatively little benefits. So I think that's the calculation that policymakers in Brussels are making. On the I think the question was from Amanda Hall on US unreliability. I think that is very much one of the reasons why countries are turning away from Washington and hedging their bets. And there's two sides to this. So for some, like Turkey, in a sense, it's because the US, or because of what the US does, so of the support that it has provided to groups within Syria in particular that Turkey considers to be terrorists. And for other countries, on the other hand, is the US not having done enough to perhaps protect them against the threats in particular from Iran. So that's a big part of the story to my mind, as well as the fact that the US is just seen as flip-flopping a lot between administrations. What kind of institutional continuity can there be if a new election can then lead to a very sudden policy change? So.
Regarding the last question, well, the region did not depart the American. The Americans themselves, they changed their strategic assessment for the region, especially after the nuclear deal with Iran under Obama's administration. And that was, I call it, naive assessment, because when Obama did that deal, of course, the region, I mean, the Gulf were excluded from that deal. That one issue. It goes back to that. Then when they announced that pivoting to Asia, okay, and leading from behind, right? And at that time, the American pivoted to Asia to counter China, and so they moved from the door, the Chinese came from the window. And they were pivoting to the region as well, and the region pivoting towards China. This is one thing. The other thing, when this happened, and that also that rosy picture, Obama said that by having that deal, so the Gulf will be an oasis of peace, and the Iranian will be a peaceful regime and will have a good relation with their neighbors, okay? And also in that deal, the main issue that American they were caring only for the part of the nuclear capabilities, and they didn't mention the proxies, Iran proxies in the region, and its intervention in the region, right? And they didn't want to include that, or even to mention it with the Iranian, to pushing them to sign the deal. And that was the main issue. The other issue also, the ballistic missiles, which is just 100 kilometers in front of us. The drones, the arms, everything, no mentioning for that. So Iran was going on, no peaceful, more intervention, more proxies intervention in the region. Then we had Syria erupted, then Yemen erupted. So everything was there. You are right when you said that. This is also this issue. It's not new, but still here in the background of the Gulfies. Yes, when the Iranian attacked Saudi, when also attacked our tankers, when the Houthi attacked us through the Iran, the American did not show that they are a realistic allies. They are not credible allies. When they moved from Afghanistan in that way, they showed the whole world they are not credible allies. So, and at the same time asking you to cut your relation with everybody. So what you are going to do, if you are main ally, are not there when you needed them, so what you will do? You cannot face Iran by yourself. The monster you cannot kill, you have to sleep with. What to do? So this is what the Saudi did, what we did. That kind of rapprochement also, that you cannot. And your allies are not there. And this is also what push others. You would say that is American can be trusted again? I would say no in the region. Because they have been tested, they were not there. And that's why they also in the region they are saying, also they announced that this region, in the beginning of Biden administration, this region is not important for them. Middle East is not their priority. So people in the region try to solve their problem within themselves. And that's what's happening in the region. Now they are saying we are coming back to the region. They are there, yes. But this is also is causing more conflict in the region. Not de-escalation, more escalation.
Okay, as for the first statement, it was not really a question. I fully agree with what you said. I think that the Revolutionary Corps Guard is a terrorist organization, should be recognized as one. And if I can quote Churchill, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And I think that this is exactly what the international community should do. As for the second point, I want to suggest a bit of a different angle, and I'm speaking from the Israeli perspective per se. I'm not speaking about on behalf of any other country. For us, the US is a very reliable partner. This hasn't changed. This is the situation. It's our strategic ally, and we'll continue to rely on its support. I want to say, though, one more thing in this regard. I served in Washington for 4 years, 2006 to 2010. When I arrived to Washington, Condoleezza Rice was the Secretary of State, and she spoke then about the pivoting to Asia. Now, okay, so she said we're pivoting to Asia, and of course there's a lot of emphasis being put on Asia, but the Americans haven't disappeared. They are very much present in the region, very much present in the Gulf, in other places in Iraq. So I think there's a bit of a gap between the statements and the actual behavior. Now, there are those who think that they're doing enough or not enough. I'm not going to go there. I'll just say that I think that in the Middle East, and this is, you talk about hedging now, but I think it's not new, that many countries in the Middle East were always playing, not to say playing both sides, but let's say both. Let's enjoy this and this one. There was always a favorite talking point by many of our European and American friends. Oh, this and this, they should choose now. Do we go here or do we go there? Well, in our region, people don't really like to choose so much. We like to have all our options open. And I think this is what I'm saying, you can call it hedging now, but I don't think this is something which is really new. And I think that if I was representing any other country from the Gulf, I think they're very right. And I can understand why being so close to Iran can be a very scary thing, and you don't want to put all your eggs in different baskets. So you're always going to keep some sort of channels open to Iran. And I put aside 1 second the regime. The current regime in Iran is a horrible regime, a murderous regime, and I hope it will not stay for long. But Iran is a country, it's a serious country. It's a civilization of thousands of years with very capable people, with a lot of I think, of prospect there. And I think that under the different leadership, we can see a very different Iran in the region as well. So I think it does make sense. So I would be less, I wouldn't take such a strong view as that things are changing to the worse and the US is leaving us and unreliable and everybody is hedging their funds. I think it's a more complex, more nuanced situation, and people have more than just one interest in mind, whether they're the Americans or the Israelis or from the Gulf states. And I would say one last thing in this regard. With all due respect to the absence of the Americans, and with all due respect to Israel's government and to the UAE government, I doubt it that we would have reached the Abraham Accord without the very active involvement of the American administration.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time is very up. So please join me in thanking our excellent speakers. And we now need to leave the room for the next panel. Thank you guys very much.